Hello friends. I can see 90% of my viewers don't subscribe while watching videos. Please hit the subscribe button and like this video. Press that bell icon for notifications. And tell me in the comments from which city you are watching this video. Your support means everything to me. Now let's start with today's story. My name is Isla Davenport, and I am about to tell you the most shocking story of transformation you have ever heard. They said I would never be more than a shadow in someone else's story, but they were wrong, devastatingly wrong. And I am about to show you exactly how I proved it. Picture this. A girl so invisible that even her own reflection seemed to fade. That was me for the first 23 years of my miserable existence. I was not just overlooked. I was erased, deleted from conversations before they even began. Treated like background noise in a world that screamed for attention. In high school, while other girls were crowned prom queens and homecoming royalty, I was the girl who got systematically cropped out of group photographs. Not accidentally. Deliberately. They would take the picture, look at it, and someone would always say the same crushing words. Can we retake it without her? It looks better this way. Can you imagine that kind of systematic erasure? Can you feel the way those words sliced through whatever confidence I had left? I was not even the funny sidekick in someone else's story. I was not the quirky best friend who got the comedic relief moments. I was nothing. A human prop. The girl people borrowed homework from but never, ever invited to their birthday parties. The one who knew everyone's secrets because they talked about their lives right in front of me. As if I were a piece of furniture that happened to have ears. When I finally gathered the courage to tell my classmates that I wanted to be an actress, their laughter was so loud and so vicious that it echoed in the hallway for what felt like hours. Madison Blackwell, the self-appointed queen of our graduating class, looked me up and down with those cold, calculating eyes and delivered the words that would haunt me for years. You will never be more than an extra, Isla. Maybe you will walk past in the background of a commercial if you are incredibly lucky. But honestly, even that seems like a stretch for someone like you. The worst part? Everyone nodded in agreement. Even the teachers who overheard just looked away, as if acknowledging the cruelty would somehow make them complicit in something they could not fix. I believed them. God help me, I believed every devastating word. For 5 long years after graduation, I proved them right. I took every background job I could find in the entertainment industry, playing the faceless barista who handed coffee to the real actors. I was the nameless office worker walking past windows and establishing shots. I was girl number 7 in crowd scenes, always positioned so far in the back that even I had trouble spotting myself when the commercials aired. I blended into scenes with such devastating efficiency that my own parents would watch my work and joke. "We almost missed you again, sweetheart. You are like a ghost on screen." They thought it was funny. They had no idea they were twisting the knife deeper with every well-meaning comment. But blending into the background was never my dream. Deep in my heart, in that place where hope refuses to die no matter how much abuse it takes, I wanted to speak. I wanted to be seen. I wanted to matter in a way that could not be cropped out or edited around. The turning point came on a Tuesday that started like every other soul-crushing day in my invisible existence. I had just been rejected for another speaking role. Not even a lead. Just 3 lines as a worried neighbor in a low-budget thriller. The casting director had looked at me for exactly 4 seconds before saying, "Thank you, next," without even letting me finish my prepared monologue. I should have left. I should have gone home to my tiny apartment and my instant noodles and my collection of rejection letters that I kept in a shoebox under my bed like evidence of my own inadequacy. But something made me stay. I hid in the back of the studio and watched Scarlett Ravencrest, the lead actress, rehearse her scenes. She was good, polished, professional, hitting every mark with precision. But as I watched her command the room, something clicked in my devastated brain. She was not better than me. She was not more talented, more deserving, more worthy of the spotlight. She was just louder, braver, completely and utterly unapologetic about wanting to be the center of attention. And in that moment, sitting in the shadows where I had always belonged, I made the decision that would change everything. I stopped waiting for permission to exist. The plan that formed in my mind was so audacious, so completely insane, that it terrified me. But terror, I realized, was just fear wearing a disguise. And I had been afraid for so long that I had forgotten what it felt like to be brave. I would create my own show. I would write my own story. I would build my own stage and put myself right in the center of it, where no one could crop me out ever again. The next 6 months were the most brutal, exhausting, soul-crushing period of my life, and also the most exhilarating. I took every side job I could find, working 18-hour days to save up the money I needed. I cleaned offices at night, walked dogs at dawn, and served coffee to people who still did not see me during the day. But now their blindness was my advantage. Every dollar I earned was a step closer to my impossible dream. I wrote the script in stolen moments between jobs, crafting a story about the invisible girl who refuses to stay hidden. I called it In Plain Sight. A title that felt like both a confession and a battle cry. It was raw, honest, brutal in its emotional truth. It was everything I had never been allowed to say, poured onto pages that trembled in my hands as I wrote them. Finding a crew was like assembling an army of misfits. I reached out to every film school dropout, every struggling cinematographer, every sound engineer who was tired of working on projects they did not believe in. I promised them nothing but equity in a dream that might never see the light of day. But somehow, miraculously, they said yes. We shot in borrowed cafes after closing time, in empty parking lots under streetlights, in my aunt's cramped attic that we transformed into different locations with nothing but creativity and determination. It was messy, chaotic, fueled by instant noodles, and the kind of stubborn hope that refuses to die no matter how many times it gets knocked down. There were nights when I cried myself to sleep, wondering if I was delusional. There were days when equipment broke and actors quit, and everything seemed to be falling apart. But every time I wanted to give up, I remembered Madison Blackwell's voice saying I would never be more than an extra, and I found the strength to keep going. The editing process nearly killed me. I spent weeks hunched over my laptop, crafting every frame with the obsessive attention of someone who knew this was their only shot. My eyes burned, my back ached, and I lived on coffee and sheer determination. But slowly, impossibly, the show began to take shape. When I finally hit upload on that first episode, my hands were shaking so violently I could barely click the button. I had no marketing budget, no industry connections, no reason to believe anyone would ever see what I had created. I was wrong about that, too. The first week was silence. Complete, devastating silence that made me wonder if I had made the biggest mistake of my life. But then something magical happened. One person shared it. Then 10. Then 100. The numbers started climbing in a way that made no sense, and suddenly my phone was buzzing with notifications I could not keep up with. People were not just watching In Plain Sight. They were connecting with it on a level that took my breath away. The comments section became a confession booth for everyone who had ever felt invisible, overlooked, dismissed as not worth the space they occupied. Finally, someone told our story. One person wrote. Finally, someone showed what it is like to be the background character in your own life, and to rise anyway. Within 2 weeks, In Plain Sight was trending on every social media platform. Entertainment blogs were calling it the breakout hit no one saw coming. Streaming services were calling my phone, offering deals that made my head spin. But the moment that truly shattered me came 3 weeks after the first episode aired. I was scrolling through social media when I saw a post that made my heart stop. Madison Blackwell, the same Madison Blackwell who had told me I would never be more than an extra, had shared my show with the caption, "So proud of my old classmate. Always knew she had something special." The audacity of that rewrite of history took my breath away. But it also confirmed something I had suspected all along. Success makes people remember you differently. Victory rewrites the past in ways that truth never could. The second season became even bigger than the first. We had a real budget this time, professional equipment, actors who actually returned my calls. But more importantly, we had a message that resonated with millions of people who had spent their lives feeling invisible. The night of the second season premiere was the moment I had dreamed of since I was that invisible girl getting cropped out of photographs. I walked down a real red carpet in a dress that cost more than my entire first season budget. Flashbulbs exploded around me like miniature lightning storms. Reporters shouted my name, my actual name, desperate for interviews, for quotes, for just a moment of my attention. The world had turned completely upside down, and for the first time in my life, every eye was on me. Not looking past me, not around me, not through me like I was made of glass. Looking at me, seeing me, recognizing that I existed and that my existence mattered. As I posed for photographers and answered questions about my overnight success, as if 5 years of background work and 6 months of brutal preparation counted as overnight, I scanned the crowd of faces watching from behind the velvet ropes. And there she was, Madison Blackwell, standing in the audience section, waving at me with an awkward smile that did not reach her eyes. She was hoping I would remember her fondly, hoping that success had made me forget the casual cruelty of her words all those years ago. I remembered her, all right. I remembered every devastating syllable of what she had said to me. I remembered the laughter that followed. I remembered how small she had made me feel, how thoroughly she had convinced me that my dreams were ridiculous fantasies that would never come true. But I did not wave back. Not because I was cruel, or because I wanted revenge, or because success had made me heartless. I did not wave back because I had learned something profound in my journey from background character to headliner. The people who try to keep you small do not deserve to share in your expansion. The voices that tell you that you will never be enough do not get to celebrate when you prove them catastrophically wrong. The ones who crop you out of their pictures do not get to pose in your spotlight. I had spent too many years being polite to people who were never polite to me, being kind to people who showed me no kindness, making space for people who never made space for me. But that version of myself, the invisible, apologetic, grateful for scraps version, had died the night I decided to create my own show. The new version of me, the one walking this red carpet with her head held high and flashbulbs reflecting off her confident smile, understood something the old me never could have grasped. I was not a background character anymore. I was not the girl who got edited out, talked over, forgotten in corners. I was not the afterthought, the consolation prize, the maybe next time, of someone else's story. I was the headliner, the main character, the one whose name was on the poster and whose face filled the screen, and whose voice commanded rooms full of people who hung on every word. And that transformation, from invisible to unmissable, from forgotten to unforgettable, from background to spotlight, was not luck or accident or charity from a generous universe. It was earned. Every brutal hour, every rejection, every moment of doubt, every night I cried myself to sleep wondering if I was delusional for believing I could be more than what other people said I was. It was justice served cold and sweet and absolutely devastating to everyone who had tried to convince me I should be grateful for their scraps. Standing on that red carpet, surrounded by cameras and reporters and industry professionals who wanted to work with me, I felt something I had never experienced before in my entire life. I felt seen. Not just looked at, but truly, completely, undeniably seen. And the most beautiful part? I had created that visibility myself. No one had given it to me as a favor or a charity case. No one had lifted me up out of pity or obligation. I had clawed my way from the background to the foreground through sheer force of will and talent, and the kind of determination that comes from having absolutely nothing left to lose. The interviews that night were surreal. Journalists who would not have noticed me if I had served them coffee just months earlier were now asking about my creative process, my inspiration, my plans for the future. They wanted to know the secret to my success, the key to breaking through in an industry that seemed designed to keep people like me invisible. The answer was simpler than they expected and more complicated than they could understand. The secret was refusing to accept other people's limitations as my own reality. The secret was understanding that permission is not something you wait for. It is something you give yourself. The secret was realizing that the only person who could keep me in the background forever was me. But the deeper truth, the one I could not say in interviews because it was too raw and too real, was this. I had not just created a television show. I had created proof that every person who had ever made me feel small was wrong. I had built a monument to the power of refusing to stay invisible, and that monument was my own success. The show continued to break records. The third season was picked up before the second had finished airing. Awards shows that had never heard my name were suddenly creating categories I might win. The same industry that had relegated me to walking past windows in crowd shots was now calling me a visionary, a breakthrough talent, the voice of a generation. But the moment that truly completed my transformation came 6 months later, at an industry gala where I was being honored as Television Personality of the Year. As I walked to the podium to accept my award, the same award that had once seemed as impossible as touching the moon, I saw familiar faces in the audience. Classmates who had laughed at my acting dreams, casting directors who had dismissed me without a second glance, industry professionals who had treated me like I was invisible for years. They were all watching me now. They were all seeing me now. And they all wanted to claim some small piece of credit for my success, to rewrite history so that they had always believed in me, always supported me, always known I was destined for greatness. But I knew the truth. I knew who had believed in me when believing in me was risky and thankless and seemingly foolish. I knew who had supported me when supporting me meant investing in a dream that looked impossible from every angle. It was me. It had always been me. Standing at that podium, holding an award that represented everything I had ever wanted and more than I had ever dared to hope for. I looked out at an audience full of people who were finally, truly seeing me. And I spoke the words I had been waiting my entire life to say. They called me a background character. I began, my voice carrying clearly through the silent auditorium. They said I would never be more than an extra, never be more than a face in the crowd, never be more than someone you might glimpse walking past a window if you were incredibly lucky. The silence was complete, breathless, electric with the energy of a truth being spoken that could not be taken back. But here is what they did not understand. I continued, feeling the power of my own voice in a way that still amazed me. Background characters are not invisible because they lack talent or worth or the right to be seen. Background characters are invisible because someone else is telling their story. I paused, letting that sink in, watching faces in the audience as understanding dawned. So I stopped letting other people tell my story. I stopped waiting for someone else to decide I was worth the spotlight. I stopped accepting that being invisible was my natural state, my permanent role, my inevitable destiny. The applause started slowly, then built to something thunderous and overwhelming and beautiful. I became the headliner of my own show, I finished. And that, it turns out, makes all the difference in the world. As I walked off that stage, award in hand and camera flashes creating a constellation of light around me, I thought about that invisible girl I used to be. The one who got cropped out of photographs and laughed out of auditions, and convinced that her dreams were too big for someone so small. I wished I could go back and tell her what I know now. I wished I could whisper in her ear during those dark nights when she cried herself to sleep. You are not too small for your dreams. Your dreams are exactly the right size for someone brave enough to make them real. But maybe that girl, that background character version of myself, had to exist so that this version could emerge. Maybe the contrast was necessary. Maybe you cannot truly appreciate being seen until you have spent enough time being invisible to understand the difference. What I know for certain is this. I am no longer the girl who gets edited out of pictures. I am no longer the one who blends into scenes so well that even my own parents have to search for me on screen. I am no longer waiting for permission to speak, to exist, to take up space in a world that told me I did not deserve any. I am Isla Davenport, and I am the headliner of my own show. I am the main character of my own story. I am the one whose name appears in the credits, whose face fills the screen, whose voice carries the narrative that millions of people connect with and find hope in and see themselves reflected in. And to everyone who ever made me feel like I should be grateful for the background, like I should be satisfied with being invisible, like I should accept that some people are born to be stars and others are born to watch from the shadows, I have just one thing to say. Thank you for underestimating me. Thank you for dismissing me. Thank you for treating me like I did not matter, because it taught me that the only opinion that truly matters is my own. You called me a background character, and in doing so, you gave me the greatest gift you could have possibly given me. You gave me something to prove. And I proved it beautifully, completely, and utterly beyond any shadow of a doubt that will ever exist. I am not in the background anymore. I am exactly where I always belonged. Center stage in the spotlight, impossible to ignore and absolutely unforgettable. The show, as they say, must go on. And finally, beautifully, triumphantly, it is my show. If this story of transformation from invisible to unstoppable inspired you, please subscribe to our channel for more incredible true stories of people who refused to accept other people's limitations and created their own extraordinary destinies. Your support helps us share these powerful journeys of triumph, and who knows, your story of breaking through barriers might be the next one we tell.